This episode is supported by Little Saints. More than a non-alcoholic beverage, it's a mushroom-infused cocktail that elevates the soul. Use code TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. That's TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. Now, enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Brown, co-host of The Mothers, where we talk to industry leaders and industry makers who are also somehow raising the next generation. If you're currently listening, and there's a decent chance that you are, do us a solid and click subscribe/follow wherever you're listening. And for bonus karma points, give us a 5-star review. For us plebes trying to build a media brand without already being famous, these little things make the biggest difference in helping the algorithm treat us kindly. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, one other plug. We're taking this show on the road. Actually, on a boat to an island. We're trying our first ever live recording on beautiful Nantucket, an island in so many ways built and carried by mothers, and you should join us. July 22nd at Sister Ship right in town. Doors open at 2:30. V and I will facilitate a conversation with the mothers behind some of Nantucket's most iconic brands. We'll have the one and only Ellen Hildebrand, queen of the beach read, and so much more. Alongside Bess Clark, who is the CEO of Nantucket Looms, a brand synonymous with the classic Nantucket aesthetic, which she took over from her own mother, and Wendy Roulard, owner of Barnaby's, the celebrated kids' toy and art store, as well as the bear behind her own children's book series. Tickets are required, and we have just a few left, not just saying that to drum up a false sense of scarcity. Link is in our episode description and also through our Instagram @TheMothersPod. And while you're there, follow us. Okay, with that behind us, welcome back. June is nearly over, and I think almost every school district is done for the year, which means we get to move into the duct tape it together reality of summer. Shout out to those of you who signed up for camps 9 months ago and snagged a spot for a small fortune. If you aren't one of those people, I see you, and I believe in unstructured time and screens. We're going to crush it anyway. Eye on the horizon line, put our best foot forward, figure it out as we go, and make it work. And that is true for our guest this week. Jessica Gelman, CEO and co-founder of Kraft Analytics Group, aka KAGR, aka KAGR, as you'll hear throughout this interview, which she conceived of and spun out from Kraft Sports and Entertainment in 2016, where she formerly led BizOps, marketing, and strategy. For anyone listening outside of Boston or New England, we're talking Kraft as in the Kraft family, as in the business behind the New England Patriots, among other things, not the cheese. Jessica also co-founded and co-chairs the highly regarded MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, which is the world's first and largest analytically focused sports conference. Bill Simmons famously and affectionately calls it Dorkapalooza. But joke's on him because they've had incredible speakers, including Double Take, President Barack Obama, and Sue Bird. My Google colleagues say, thank you for making data cool. Jessica is also a minority partner in the Utah Royals of the National Women's Soccer League. But before all this, she was a different kind of baller. Jessica played basketball in Israel after graduating from Harvard, where she was the Harvard Female Athlete of the Year. She was also recognized as an Ivy League legend of basketball in 2018. And I didn't even know that was a thing until now. So many things are worth celebrating and acknowledging about Jessica. Top on my list is that she is proudly, comfortably, and determined to be herself in any situation. As an authenticity seeker myself, I love being around this energy. And we felt it right off the bat as she took our interview from the hotel room in between a delayed flight, a last-minute shower, and running to see her friend's off-Broadway show. Second on the list is that her authentic self is an athlete. Sure, she's in a suit now, but she's an athlete, and not today's somewhat fancy athlete. She's a blue-collar, Rocky-watching, Hoosiers-loving athlete. The kind that just does the work in shitty facilities, that puts a team on her back, team above self, outwork the next person. Very do-your-job mindset of Pat's Nation. Maybe she even inspired that slogan. Third, and now that we're here, I have to say that this is in no particular order. If I may be so bold to say, she married up. Her wife, Petra, is outrageously accomplished and capable. As I say in the interview, I've never had to scroll so far down on someone's LinkedIn profile before hitting previous employment. She is currently active on so many boards in the healthcare space, in addition to leading so many companies, though supposedly just one right now, Carelon Behavioral Health. They also have 2 young boys, and I have no idea how they do it all, but I know they do it together. As Jessica admitted, she sometimes thinks of the work Corbin does as so important, saving lives. But Corbin's response is always, well, Your work makes life worth living. And then we all swoon. In this convo, we talk about Jessica's comfort with so often being the one and only, what it was like to carry their first child and support Corbin, who carried their second, how, following the model of Robert and Jonathan Kraft, she parents publicly in the office as a way of normalizing the parenting and working juggle often felt quietly by women, and it seems to be effective. At KAGR, 75% of the exec team and almost 50% of the management team is female. Jessica also talks about the greatest part of motherhood so far and the coaching story that gets her all choked up every time. And I loved this. How maternity leave was the first time she had mental space from the day-to-day doing of work in order to see the need for KAGR. Maybe we all need some distance and perspective in order to see what matters. Jessica is humbly leading by example, breaking barriers and bringing her team along at the highest level, and in an industry where she really was the, quote, one and only for so long. It was an honor to sit with her and hear her experience leading and raising kids all at the same time. Please enjoy our conversation with Jessica Gelman.
Corbin's my wife. She was like great about it, but like, yeah, I mean, it's an extra day that I'm away. I always tie in business when I do these things too. So
that's a sneaky way. More so Corbin feels okay about it, or more so you feel okay about it?
No, I don't know if I know any other way. I don't know. Like,
it's a work trip.
It is a work trip because the Sixers are a client and that's who he works for. So I'm taking the president of business operations to the event with me. See?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. My husband does that too. He like really,
sorry, my hair.
He's like,
I just took a shower.
He merges it all. You're
great.
really like showing up as your authentic self, which is from what I understand is not totally off brand, but I'm really grateful.
That's who I am. Are we recording? Okay, we're recording, but I wanted to just tell you, thank you for doing this, because even the process of like looking at the questions and thinking about it was like really profound for me, because I hadn't, you have all these like little thoughts about how things connect. And I had some like good chuckles to myself as I was like, here's a couple stories I want to share, kind of a thing, you know?
Oh, great. I love to hear that. And especially from someone like you, that means a lot. I think, the whole premise of this, Jess, you and I talked about this when I first like connected with you, when I left Google and I had these kids and I was moving on to something new. I wasn't sure what I wanted to be. And everyone was like, and I was sort of exploring the sports world because that's very much core to who I've always been, as like an athlete on some level.
Yeah.
And you were like, if you can take time, like take time. And I followed your advice. And this whole concept came from the taking of that time, because it put me in the world of mothers and motherhood. It also put me in a world where I was suddenly appreciating sort of, I don't know, what mothers, what caregivers carry. And also more attuned to how limited the stories are around those figures.
Totally.
And my favorite story, I don't know if you've heard me tell this anecdote, but it all came to a head at a Sarah McLachlan concert, as everything does.
For me, it's Seeing to Go Girls.
Well, I wanted to go. They had a great so Sarah McLachlan started Lilith Fair.
I know.
Do we know this?
Of course. I mean, it's like, I'm gay. Okay. Of course I know this.
Well, I would say I knew about
She's
Lilith
not
Fair.
an idiot.
I didn't know Sarah's role in Lilith Fair.
Yeah.
But she was the first time where I saw someone from a position of strength on stage, be charismatic, beautiful, capable, strong, and doing her work thing, talking about her life stuff, having her kids be a part of all that conversation. And everyone was like, wow. And I was looking back to all of my experience sort of in a corporate setting where you just really don't see if you're at work, you pretend you don't have kids. And anytime the lines kind of blurred, it happened a lot in sort of a sports setting, maybe more, where you'd start to see, like when Serena Williams retired and she had that Vogue spread and was like, Tom Brady doesn't need to have kids, but I want to have kids. And that has a different implication for me. The blurring of those lines were always such like a relief to me to see. And then I started to think like there really aren't enough stories of, mothers that are occupying, speaking in generalizations, occupying like kind of straight white man spaces and are being successful in a sort of straight white man way And surprise, like they're also raising kids. And the idea of like, we're all doing all of these things at once, I think would be such a powerful story, and could be my lofty view is like, this could be politically useful of like,
Totally.
These are people that we can't dismiss. And so I just felt like there weren't really channels for people to be telling those stories. So anyway, here we are.
Well, I actually think it's really powerful because there is this like amazing dichotomy between not in my life. Like I really blur the business and personal, professional, and whatever. I like how you call it, like societal. But when I coach my kids in a lot of sports, and the parents of the kids have no idea what I do professionally. And sometimes one of them will like, it's only happened twice. And I literally have coached both my kids for, 6-7 years in different sports. And like, I didn't know you did started the Sloan conference or, worked in sports and all these things. And there's a part of me that really likes that I'm like standing on my own as a mom who's volunteering and coaching and trying to like give back in a different way, while also like, being like a badass and, building businesses. So
a sneaky badass. I totally agree. I mean, and it's nice to have the escape also.
Sometimes.
And we talk a lot on
it can be stressful.
Yeah.
Parents are very needy.
Yeah. I know.
True.
I coach my son's team.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. It's the moment where I actually feel the most, because my favorite part is like, I'll play with them.
That's awesome.
And that's really the best, where I'm just like,
and you dominate them.
It's when I can just shut down everything else in my life and just play purely for the joy, sports, and obviously feel kind of excellent at them because they're young and not that great.
How old are your kids?
It's when I sort of feel like I'm going back into my old self. This one, the oldest is 10. He basically turns 11 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we have an 8-year-old girl and a 4-year-old girl.
So our two, like your two oldest are the same as like my kids, or very similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, before we get too far.
Okay.
V, really quick, you've like met maybe on paper, but V is co-host here, and anything that's good about my oldest kid is because of V, because she's our very first nanny. And then
I love it.
Our family in so many ways. And I'm so grateful. Like, so much of this world is possible because of her, but also just another lens onto like caregiving is underappreciated.
Totally.
But she recently had her kid.
Yay.
And who usually is on her lap.
I think I heard it in the Lexi. I heard it in the Lexi podcast.
I definitely did.
Yes.
I was like, that sounds like a baby.
Yes. But we get into these sort of fun, like multi-generational perspectives a little bit on what it is to be doing all these things at once. And eventually kids will sleep. We always remind V.
One day.
You know what they say. The days are long,
but the
years are short.
Yeah,
it's true.
No, that's true.
Yes. Yes. I was like, oh no, what do they say? They never sleep till they're 21. Like what?
I don't know. That's a whole other like the different anxieties that moms have, and I have a very unique lens because because I birthed one of our children and Corbin birthed the other child, so I kind of got to see how like postpartum played out differently for each of us.
Yeah,
I mean, you see it with your friends, but like, anyways. We have so much to go into. I want to
talk about this too.
Okay, it's on my list.
We have so much. Oh my god! And I can't believe that your brain is functioning right now. Okay, but
I slept on the plane.
We
after working for 2.5 hours. Life.
Well, that's work-life balance right
there. That's right, baby. Yeah, that's right.
Magical moments. Okay, so
and I'm drinking a liquid IV. So
same.
Your college self is so proud of you right now.
I'm hydrated.
Okay, we like to start with this like open-ended question as if you were interviewing for a job. It's my favorite question. And you have an incredible background. Also, your wife has like broken LinkedIn because you have to scroll down like 50 rows before you get to like her prior work, because she seems like she currently has 25 jobs advising on insignificant capacities.
She's obviously a super baller, but she is running behavioral health for Anthem. So she's been in that role since about November. Yeah, I mean, this is also something that we'll likely get into, but she's in healthcare, obviously. So I'm like, oh man, your life is so important. You're saving lives. And she goes, and because I'm in sports, she'll go, oh, but you make lives worth living. And I'm like, aw.
That's a beautiful combo. Oh, I love that. I'm going to take that when I think I'm not doing something important. Okay. Okay. Tell us, how would you tell us the story of how we get to Jessica Gelman of today?
All right.
Running a massive organization that you started, married, kids, doing all the things.
Yeah. Well, like you, it really starts with a love of sports, because I do think like the fact that I'm in the sports industry is unique. And one of the things as a mom today, I look at what I would call like the overprocessing of what is happening to kids and what they need to do and the sports they need to play and things like that. But for me, I was definitely a latchkey kid in the 80s and playing sports. And I had all these questions about the playing of sports. In particular, I grew up outside of Chicago. And I was obsessed with Michael Jordan because there were no women's basketball games on TV. And I wanted to understand why he was able to perform so well in pressure situations. And that ultimately led me to stats and trying to help myself perform better in pressure situations. But the undercurrent of kind of that path was that throughout my life, especially as a tomboy, playing in predominantly all boys teams growing up until, 6th, 7th grade, I was okay being the first, and or taking the path less traveled. Right. So I say that even in the context of, fast forward to coming out of business school, going into sports, which just, that is not what people did in 2002. Or, even like then even from there within sports, trying to find different ways to approach and do things and think differently. And that led to an interest in analytics, which was related to my own interest in using data to understand sports and understand stories, and ultimately to entrepreneurship. At the same time, and again, I think people are pretty consistent in their life. And again, I know today, especially in Massachusetts, where same-sex marriage, I think it's 20 years now. But even when Corbin and I were married 13 years ago, you can cut that pause, right?
Definitely.
It was only legal in 5 states. So it's like not that long ago. And this concept of figuring myself out, because it really took me a long time, being true to myself also at work is also core to being like a mom today. Because even for my kids, or our kids, sorry, in both of their classes, they're the only kids that have 2 moms in Massachusetts, in Needham.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should be saying what state I'm from.
I've thought about that, and our kids are in Newton. I've thought about this also. Yes, it's surprising. Yes.
So I think like that as like a stats, like your data and love of sports and being my true authentic self. And so, in terms of like that, I think kind of that core part of who you are, who I am. And for me, sports was just something I was really passionate about. I went and did kind of consulting. I played professional basketball for a little bit in Israel because I wanted to know what it felt like to be the product, to be like the player. And then I came back and I call it like I took my medicine. I moved to New York. I learned some real like business skills. I started a basketball camp in my hometown. So I always had that little entrepreneurial slant for girls, because there wasn't such a thing when I was growing up, and I wanted to provide opportunities for girls to learn and, have maybe someone who looked like them from the town. We moved to Connecticut when I was in high school, and then I went back to business school with the focus, like really I wanted to be in the sports industry, mostly because for me, we didn't go to very many sporting events when I was growing up, but going to them were some of the highlights of my childhood, especially with my family. And just to be on the other side of that, I thought would be so fun. And I studied psychology at Harvard, and just understanding people and how how to create those memories, as I kind of alluded to, that make life worth living was really exciting. So I went to business school and did a project for the Kraft family during my second year. And that ultimately led to them creating a role for me when I was graduating. And again, people didn't go into sports at that time coming out of business school. The values of teams obviously today are in the, 6-7 billions. Then it was in the, 100 millions. So, and then over time, I really brought this analytics slant to understanding the customer, to thinking about engaging the fan. Performance marketing became a thing, and ultimately ended up running most of the Patriots business lines at the same time with my friend Daryl Morey, who is the president of basketball operations for the Sixers today. He and I co-founded the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, which is one of, I think many people consider it the leading sports conference in the world. We'll have 2,500 people at it every year. It's our 20th anniversary next year. President Obama has spoken at. Oh, thank you. And so I was getting all of this exposure to what was happening and what wasn't happening, and approached. This is like a little bit of the mom thing, but had the idea for KAGR based on what I was seeing. The Sloan Conference is a nonprofit, just for clarity. It's educational in nature, and recognize this need and the evolution of the sports industry around analytics and understanding the fan. And so approached the Krafts with the concept of KAGR, which they were like, yes. And I went home to Corbin that night, and I'm like, well, I either like just knocked it out of the park or like totally screwed us. Anyways, but we do now work across the entire sports industry. We touch over 70 million sports fans across our clients, which include the NCAA, the 76ers, the Commanders, the LA Rams, the NFL. And, I'm obviously very proud of it. But I think one thing that's really important is that when I had the time, that moment to really think of what were the challenges that I was seeing in the industry, it was when I was on my maternity leave.
Oh, tell me more about that, because I've come up with a variety of business ideas on the mat leave or the parental leave. Yes.
Well,
yes.
I will say, obviously in Massachusetts today, the parental leave is different in a positive way than when I was, on my maternity leave. So I only took 9 weeks off, which I would say was definitely too little. So, but I mean, there's a lot of night time that you're up. You have time to think. For me anyways, it was a break from just the doing and even the preparation for going on maternity leave, and some of the systems that I put in place in advance were things that I hadn't been doing before, but gave me some capacity and space to think about the solving pain points and having just a bigger view to kind of piece together all the things that I was seeing in my day-to-day across the what was happening with the Kraft Sports and Entertainment, I was seeing with the Sloan Conference. And so that space was really valuable. That said, going back to work, I definitely felt that I was like, I have to like take a step forward, which I think also was maybe that's like a type A personality thing, or you don't want to like, you're almost pretending, or I was almost pretending like I didn't have a kid, but like had all these master plans. Right. But anyways, so I had that break. And I think the biggest like where I am today is an amalgamation of all of the different parts of my life. And I would say even more so in running KAGR today. And even when we started doing all the work with the NCAA a few years ago, being able to experience sports through my kids' eyes too provides such a unique and profound understanding of the challenges of collegiate sports, of the challenges of youth sports. And so, I guess everything kind of adds up. I think like if you starting back, back in Chicago when I was playing sports with the boys, no, I would not have said that this is where I would be. But looking backwards, you're like, okay, all of that makes sense into like navigating and learning and applying the learnings as the world evolves, because that's the whole thing, is that the world is evolving very rapidly. And, I mean, analytics wasn't a thing, even in I mean, a little bit in the world at large 15 years ago, but definitely not meaningfully in sports.
Yeah. No, I remember being at Google, which is obviously all about data. And we'd always look at the sports industry and be like, what is happening? They're handing over essentially like paper tickets that no one knows where they printed them out. And no one's tracking what they did with them. So thank you for bringing data to sports.
Well, I didn't bring it. I think I harnessed it, right? Like I identified.
You invented it.
Yeah, no. But the truth is that I was looking at what was happening at Google. And again, like even Facebook in the early days, that was really like 2006. That was still the early days of the stuff that we were doing. Yeah. Just seeing what was happening and recognizing we weren't putting all of these things that I was experiencing in the world and how I was being engaged wasn't happening in sports, and like it should.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so many directions I want to go right now. I'm trying to figure out which is the most useful. But first, I was just curious, just practically, you're operating on all cylinders and then some. And then from what I can tell, you have a wife who is firing on all cylinders and then some. And then you apparently have children and you apparently coach their team. Like, how is all of this happening? And how are you? Are we okay?
Well, thank you for your concern. You need not be concerned. Well, first, I definitely am a yes person. Like there's so many things that I want to do. And so it is hard for me to say no. I think across my life, I have people who encourage me to say no, but it's just like, that's, I think I maybe have like perpetual FOMO. However, as a mom, it's easier to say no because you know what you're giving up. But I have done some really crazy things. So like last year in the fall, I was coaching flag football, which by the way, I had to like teach myself flag football.
Yes. It's a whole different sport.
Totally.
We'll
just
play. My oldest just got into it. Yeah.
Yeah. The kids loved it because I made like a code for whether we were rushing or not, that I was yelling and they thought it was really cool. Anyways, needless to say, I was on the other side of the country and the game was on Sunday and I literally took a red eye, which you should not do after 30. And I did it because I wanted to get back to coach. And I'm so glad I did. But like, that's the hard thing, is that there definitely are strains sometimes on sleep, but I sleep a lot too. I'm trying to answer your question. I would say, one, having a really great partner is super, super critical. Corbin and I talk and balance and plan a lot. And we hear this a lot from our friends. I do think there is an advantage of being two women because we really do, I think, and also both of us are very team oriented and want good and great for the other person. We do take on a lot. So it isn't like all on one of our shoulders. Now there are times when it is all on one of our shoulders. That's inevitable just with, you have spikes. But I think we talk about it when we're taking multi-day trips. We have to have those conversations. We don't have live-in support, but we have, managed to have very good support across the course of our parenting. But yeah, I mean, there are times when it's really, really hard. Last year, as an example, I was down in Charlotte at a NASCAR, all day meeting. And Corbin was recently starting this job that I mentioned earlier, running behavioral health for Anthem. And she wrote me just that she was worried she was getting a headache, which is code for I'm getting a migraine. And she does. And then, by the way, she doesn't get them very often. But I was in another state. And our kids needed to get picked up and she was supposed to pick them up. And we luckily have, and actually she really just saved us. But I reached out to this woman who was a senior at BC who was helping us. And I'm just we have an issue. Can you help? And she yep. And so obviously you never want to be in that type of a situation, but that's part of sometimes it's going to be really stressful. It really, really is.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
sorry to share that story.
No, it's good because I feel like that's there's no safety net. Like I think and I only really know dual income parents. And there's inevitably going to be a moment like that probably happens weekly here, daily probably, but and you need to be able to like phone a friend. But yeah, I was curious if this idea of like invisible labor, like all the little things that pile up. I have one theory that so much of it starts in like discrepancies in leave at the earliest age when you have in a heterosexual couple where you have the mother who is the default parent because they just have a couple extra weeks hopefully, and dad goes back to work. You talked about how you each carried one of your kids. Did you address these kind of the unknown knowns or the small micro responsibilities ahead of time, or how did you decide like what you're each going to do?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's really hard. I've seen so many friends where that happens. And I think it's really unfortunate. And I even, obviously the women that I work with today who are moms at KAGR and otherwise, and even, trying to help guide them and give them grace. I encourage themselves to give themselves grace because there are times when just things pile on and it's just how are you going to handle this? But to answer your very specific question about do we talk about it? No. I think we naturally gravitate towards specific things. However, we do talk about when one of us is overwhelmed. And it's very rare, I think, for either of us to raise our hand and say, I need help, because we're like Gen Xers to the core, like grit through it. So when that does happen, and I've done it and she has done it, we both try to react from a place of empathy and compassion and like, let's make adjustments. And actually that's what ultimately led to this woman I mentioned, us hiring her a couple of years ago. Now she's probably working like 10 hours a week, just, cause our kids are older in school. They're 8 and 10, 8 and 11, sorry, almost 9 and 12, but they're in school. So it's really, we need help with some of the unknown periods, like the one I just mentioned, but also really a lot of the shuttling after school. And it's like, it's a short window at the end of the day. And then Corbett and I, where we do really plan is ensuring that we're not both traveling at the same time.
Yeah. That makes sense. You mentioned that you work around a lot of other moms, other women now. I imagine that was not always the case, and that you probably were often the only woman in the room for maybe decades. And then now I don't know how I still think it's like male dominated. But I wonder what that was like compared to now becoming a mother in those spaces. Like, I'm just curious how that evolution or what that experience was.
So first I would say I'm very proud that 75% of our executive team at KAGR is women.
Amazing.
Yeah. And close to 50% of our like management team is. And
amazing.
I do think two things. One, providing the spaces, many of them have come in and grown with the company, which I think just speaks to the environment that we have. I do think that COVID was helpful in terms of we're hybrid, we're in office 3 days a week, and people work, and there are things that come up. People do coach, like myself. I think most of the other senior executives coach in some form or fashion too, and by the way, like the Krafts, when I was coming up, they also coach their kids too. So there's, you're modeling some of the things that you've seen.
Right.
But creating an environment in a sports tech and analytics for women to be successful is something I'm really proud of. But yes, specifically when I had our oldest, I think I was only the third or fourth woman who had a kid. I was very nervous. And yes, there were very few women. And even when we spun out KAGR 9 years ago, and I moved into the C-suite, it became even less women in terms of who I was interacting with. That said, at least what I found, and I do think this might be something that could be unique to the sports industry, which is that sports is very much a relationship business. Many other industries are transactional businesses. And so talking about our kids in professionally is part of the deal. I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah, I do think I actually know a lot about obviously the people I work with, but then clients and partners, and I've met the kids, they've shadowed me, I mean, just so many different ways. And I think especially because of the Sloan conference, which I'll just say like equity and diversity is something that's really important and something that is like a through line for me and Corbin for that matter. But it's hard it can be a little harder to get women to speak at conferences, especially who are moms, because they don't want to be away. And we're a Friday, Saturday conference too. 50% of our speakers are women. And I mean, I definitely encourage the women who speak to bring their kids so that their kids can see them, because in sports, the greatest part about sports and working in sports is that you get to share what you do and you get to bring your people to work. And with the Sloan conference too, it's awesome for your children to see you succeeding and being a badass, because a lot of times they only see you as a mom or their parent.
Right.
And so anyways, did I answer your question?
Are there other ways? Well, I was just curious. It's really powerful to role model these things and create spaces. And I think one thing we've talked a lot about with various guests is there's the theory of creating space and supporting mothers and parents of all kinds. But in practice, sometimes that can feel really inconvenient and hard, especially if you're growing a new business line. I was curious if there are ways that you consciously or subconsciously, things that have contributed to having so many women, on your executive team.
Yeah. I mean, I think when people see executive leaders as moms with kids, and I have tons of photos in my office of my family, of my, Corbin and the boys. And I mean, I'm really, I probably will tell a story about coaching my kids or something that happened, I don't know, a couple times a week, because there's so many lessons that I have from them that translate and I think are relatable.
Did you have role models for how to show up and be, a leader and a parent at the same time? Or were you kind of creating it yourself?
Well, I mean, I have worked with the Kraft family for 23 years. I mean, I don't know if there's a better example of Robert and Jonathan Kraft. And I feel really lucky.
I'm glad that's true. I don't know if everyone knows how they show up at work.
I don't know a background, so if you want to share.
Sure. So well, I mean, and by the way, Robert's other children are also involved with the Kraft Group. So Robert Kraft is the chairman and CEO of the Kraft Group, which includes not only the sports properties, the paper businesses, as well as KAGR is one of the business lines. And Jonathan is the president of the Kraft Group, and he's Robert's oldest son. And they are the perfect yin and yang. I love watching how they interact, the different roles that they play, how proud Robert is of Jonathan, how Jonathan sets Robert up to be successful and vice versa. And the admiration is so beautiful to watch. And for me, it would be such a gift to be able to work with my children one day. Just seeing that. So I don't know. I mean, that's about as close as you get as bringing your child to work every day.
Yeah. I love to hear it, because I think when we ask this question, there's sort of an implication that of course, the role model that would be useful is another woman who's having a kid. And that's not necessarily true. I think it's also useful that it's not normalized. The world's getting better. We're kind of getting better at normalizing things. But I know for sure in workspaces I've been in or visited that is not the norm or the supported, empowered way of showing up as a male leader either. And that how to actually intimately show love and affection for your kids, and how that actually contributes to being a positive role model and effective leader. I Thank you for sharing the anecdotes.
Well, I would also be remiss if I didn't talk about my mom who, worked, especially in my childhood. Like I said, I was a latchkey kid.
Mhm.
She worked full time in a very demanding job, I think until I was about like 13 years old. And then she definitely hit the proverbial glass ceiling in the 80s, of course. I was aware of that, but I think also there were learnings from the experiences that I had as a kid and also how Corbin was raised and how we're raising our boys today, which I can get into.
Go.
Specifically, and I love this because it wasn't what my experience was growing up, but we have dinner with our kids every night together that we're both home. And Corbin and I, our intention is that we'll cook dinner together. We have the kids set the table, but that's the time that she and I have to catch up. And we try to the extent possible at dinner to hear what their days are like. We'll share a little bit about ours, but we want to give them the time to engage with us. So that's very different than what my experiences were. And it's actually pretty interesting, the balance where my parents definitely came to my sporting events in high school and college, but not at all when I was in my youth. And I recently had to make a last minute trip to Miami, and I missed this thing at my kids' school called the Mayrathon, where it's like the marathon, but it's in May. And
I got it.
And I was having some mom guilt, I guess, about doing it. And one of the women I work with said, it's okay for your kids to know that you love your job and that you're going to do that too.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you for that. And I did happen to be meeting with Alex Rodriguez, so I did ask for an autographed baseball for each of them.
Convenient.
But my oldest, he was very upset still that I missed it. And I said to him, look, he's graduating or whatever they had to. I don't know how you graduate from 5th grade, but he's exiting elementary school. And I'm like, there's so many activities for you to end the school year. Like, I need to know what's important to you because it's really hard to do all of them. And so last week, my college basketball coach received the Harvard Medal of Honor, and my son, which I was obviously very proud of. I wrote her letter for her to get the award. Obviously, I was going to say she was my other model because she had a young
That's wonderful.
kid.
I thought she might be.
Oh my God, yes.
Kathy Delaney Smith is incredible. You know her better than I do.
I
admired her from the field. Kathy
Delaney Smith is, I think, when you think about a teacher and someone who emulates what it is, how you want to, she's fun and funny and gets shit done, and has a wonderful son who, it's hard to believe, I thought he was so much younger than me, but he's only 10 years younger than me. But I mean, he was in and around when when I was playing. He was 8 or so, and she would tell us stories about him, how he and his best friend were playing Nerf basketball in the room, and they were pretending not to be any player on the Celtics, but to be players on the Harvard women's basketball team.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I think that. So she was a wonderful role model, and obviously the hours and commitment of a coach is very significant, especially in the Ivy League where it's Friday, Saturday night, that you're traveling and managing all of those different elements. But back to it. So she was receiving this Medal of Honor from Harvard, and my son was in the quote opera, which is a skit, kind of an hour-long event. And I said to him, you were really upset when I missed the marathon. Is this something you really want me to be at? Because I was going to go to Harvard, come back, then go back to Harvard for another event. And he is like, it's really important. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's just but I think that was a little bit of a new thing for me to ask him to help me prioritize the things.
Yeah. I love that too, because often we feel like the expectation is to be at everything or otherwise we feel guilty. And I do, it is helpful to give them agency once they know what is important.
Well, but also I don't think I can keep saying to him, well, my parents came to none of these things when I was your age, because the difference is that now he's used to me being there and even coaching him. And so actually my relationship with him is very different than obviously the relationship that I had with my parents. And I love my relationship with him, both of them. Like they're both funny and fun. And I love coaching them.
I'm sure.
And being their mom too, playing with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit to when you were sharing your version of your story. And I totally identify with this, which is that being your authentic self and figuring out who you are and showing up as that person kind of in every space is really important to you. And it's something that I realized it matters a lot to me too. I was curious what did it mean when you became a parent and suddenly you were a mother, if you think of yourself as a mother? Did that, and you've talked a little bit about like becoming a parent later. So you've had a lot of time becoming Jessica Gelman. And then we introduce kids and there's another role that you play. And I was just curious how that, if it did, impacted like how you see yourself or what you want out of the world, like what your identity might be. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe we're well established and we're moving along.
The best part about motherhood is seeing life through their eyes for the first time. To me, there's nothing better than that. And this one gets me like a little. There like not recent, but two things happened in the past year where it's like you don't even know that they hear what you're saying. So, or maybe three, but the first is I've mentioned that I coach my oldest in flag, and this one makes me emotional every time. I don't know why, but they lost this game during the regular season, and we ended up playing that same team again in the playoffs. And oh my God, the team played so well and it was so fun. It was all his best buddies. And like we did the cheer at the end of the game, and he came up and he gave me the biggest hug and he just looked me in the eyes and the pure joy on his face. And he just said, "Mom, we did it." And I will never forget that moment because obviously have had like tons of success athletically, but that was the most joyous moment I felt like athletically. Anyways, that's really silly, but that
no, not at all.
But anyway, so that my youngest, he can get anxious and things can be hard, and I told him this thing that I say to myself when I'm like kind of questioning myself a little bit, and it's BBB. Bold, brilliant, beautiful. And so I don't know, a few weeks later, he goes, BBBB. And I was like, "Oh, you remembered that?" He said, bold, brilliant, beautiful, and brave. And I'm just like, right? So
building on the legacy.
Yeah. So anyways, motherhood for me, I think the number one thing that I was told when I first became a mom was just, that maybe it's like, I think I have empathy. I've always had empathy, but I think I became more empathetic and understanding of the different places that people are in. And I also think because this is pretty unique, because I got to both be the birth mom and then have the, like, I guess we would say like the dad kind of experience where my wife partner. Where, I mean, I was like walk through the office when Corbin was pregnant, and I would say to all the guys, I'm like, "Man, you guys don't even know how easy you have it." And they would, if I would like complain even a little bit about anything that was happening, they're like, "She's right, you're wrong." I'm like, "Great advice." So I think that, I don't know, maybe just a little softer, a little more understanding, but also just, I mean, it's impossible to not, at least for me, really like have those memories and moments, but it is a balance for sure. And I wouldn't say I have it right, but having an amazing spouse, partner, teammate, wife for life, all of those things is super critical. But then also, like, I think some of the expectation setting that we've done with our kids, that they're part of the team too, and how we need them to help out. We're not talking anything crazy, but like walk the dog, set the table, clear clear the table, empty the dishwasher in the morning. Like,
and
those, because like all of us could do all of those things, but I think it's also really important for them to be learning to contribute, not only for us, but frankly, for like their future partners.
Yeah. We do talk a lot about this, the concept of having it all and whether mothers can have it all or anyone can have it all. Is that something that I don't know, guided your expectations of what it looks like to be working and have kids and find ways to spend some time with friends? Is that something that like looms over your head, or do you not really think about what having it all is?
I mean, I think people define success and having it all in different ways. I think I have, probably because I had kids later in life, have more control of my schedule than I otherwise would have. And I'm really grateful for that, because I'm able to be engaged and involved in so many different ways. And I also think that I'm modeling that behavior for everyone at KAGR. But also, like, there are expectations. Like, we are a services business and we have clients. So to me, I think everything has to be integrated. And so my kids know about what I do. Like, I love that they ask me questions. They tell me they're learning about analytics in school, and I ask them to explain to me what it is to them. And I'll then like try and ask them questions relating to sports, which they can relate to. And I think that's really special because I'm in an industry that can be relatable to kids. To a lot of people anyways.
Have you thought about, sorry to interrupt, I was curious. I was just connecting dots with what the role modeling of your mom, who, as you described, sort of hit a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And then in this concept of having it all is implied, like maybe should we make trade-offs or should we not make trade-offs? And I'm curious if are there trade-offs that you're sort of less, I don't know, interested in making, given that your own mother maybe had to make sort of didn't want to, but sort of was capped in some way?
It's a great question. I often used to say my grandmother was one of the first 13 employees at NASA down in Newport News, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
And when I was graduating from HBS, she said, I never thought I would see a woman graduate from HBS, let alone my granddaughter. And so I do feel a tremendous responsibility to give back to the world and to take advantage of the opportunities, because I do think there are still inherent glass ceilings. It makes me really sad that my mom experienced that. I try very hard to ensure, fairness and consistency within everything that I can potentially control. I mean, I think someone said to me once, there's 3 phases of your career. There's learning, earning, and returning. And I think you can do all 3 at the same time. And in 2019, Megan Rapinoe's speech after they won the World Cup really struck me, because she talked about, everyone could do and fight for equity. And I realized that I had all these platforms to do that. And so I kind of went to work at KAGR with the Sloan conference. I've kind of mentioned some of the things. And then personally, we invested into the NWSL, Utah Royals. I was on the board of the NWSL for a while. But in the same respect, the couple things that I didn't think about, and Corbin didn't think about either when we made that investment, is that also our kids were gonna see women playing professional sports. I kind of mentioned earlier about Michael Jordan, and there were no women's basketball games on. Last year, when we were going around soccer, the first soccer practice with my youngest, I said, where you go to school, who your favorite soccer player is. And each of the kids went around, and Messi and Ronaldo. And then my youngest goes, kind of just, can I say Ali Sentnor, who was the number 1 draft pick for the Royals and is obviously on the U.S. women's national team today. And so to me, there's so many different ways that just by living and integrating, and the boys have had tons of exposure to female athletes and male athletes, that they see it and respect it. And by the way, like, how important is that for women to continue to rise, that men can be okay and respect working for women.
Yeah.
And that's the natural, I think, evolution of where we're going. And I say to both of our boys, Corbin and I both do, that they're likely going to have opportunities that we didn't have, and kind of like no pressure, but you know, please take advantage of them. Like, please help the world continue to move forward in all the ways that we want and can. And that's everything from sharing the workload on the home front to being aware on the professional front.
Yeah. I love what you said about after Megan Rapinoe's speech that you heard kind of like everyone should do what they can do with what they have. I love that you said, and so I went to work. And I think I love that response. And I don't, whether you meant literally, then I went to the office, or I think it meant then I got to work. And I think a lot of people, especially now, everyone's interested in some sort of social justice cause to solve everything. But I love your career thus far is such, to me, an inspiring story of like, you've done the work like the whole time, and you consistently show up and keep doing the work on yourself, but also like professionally, and like how that just, it's a long arc, and you've been wildly successful. You're just beginning. Like, I just really appreciate that. A lot of people get like all starry eyed about like, let me be Michael Jordan tomorrow. And it's like, well, actually it's a very athlete thing. Well, let me actually like do some like work on my free throws for a second, like outside a couple hours a day. So I don't know. I really admire how you've built your career, kind of one foot in front of the other, and that like that consistency pays off.
I mean,
and continuing to optimize and see the vision.
Well, and I think that's why today, when I look at what's happening with youth sports and college sports, I'm worried because of the professionalization of both of them. And kids just need to learn how to play, right? And what you said is right. Like, kids will just go and shoot threes. And your point, you got to warm up your shot hitting the little bunnies first. And the same is true. I think people learn habits through sports, through academics, that then go on to set the table for the rest of their lives and how they operate and how they work. And that's certainly my example. So thank you for noticing, I guess I would say, and honoring it.
Athlete to athlete. I see it. Yeah. Yes. Okay. We have these quick closing questions. If you have like 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
We can do a lot. Pressure. Speak as long as you have time to speak.
Okay.
We like this question. I'm actually curious. So the question is, if you go back and tell your new mom self one thing, what would it be? I'm curious for you. You could choose. Did you carry your first kid, or did Corbin?
I was old. I'm 4 years older than her. So yes, I did it.
Okay.
And then she tried to say she wasn't gonna. And I'm like, no, you have to.
I did it. You have to.
Yeah. Well, anything you would say to her? I was going to say, if it was different when you played the other role.
Oh, that's interesting.
If there's different advice.
She didn't listen to me, but I was like, take 12 weeks.
Yeah.
I think for me, the concept of postpartum, I believe, has a negative connotation, and I wish it didn't. And I think it shows up very differently for everyone. For me, it was anxiety. In a really, really bad way. I was so worried about needing to take my kid to the hospital. I literally didn't let anyone come over to the house for like 6 weeks. And that, I think, is just a miss. Like, sharing a newborn with the world, I mean, is pretty special. And so that would probably be at the top of my list of just enjoy all the elements, and the babies were born in much worse circumstances than what we're dealing with. I mean, and that's really, we need to.
Well, and also anxiety is real. It doesn't mean, I don't know, that there's support that people need in order to like manage through those feelings. Anxiety was my version of postpartum also. And
I didn't know it was a thing.
Real.
Like, no one told me it was a thing.
Yeah. Let's everyone listening. It's a thing. Yes, it is. And medication can help, or just knowing that it's a thing and not like kind of being able to know that this is a chemical experience, not necessarily real life, but it's,
So don't hunker down in your house. And
Right. Don't white knuckle it. Totally. I guess maybe building on that a little bit, but is there something thus far along this journey of motherhood that could have made it a little bit easier, or a theme of things?
I mean, I do. I mean, I said it earlier, but I try to share throughout the course and the different stages. And again, I guess I would maybe like halfway through the heaviest lift of parenting, which is the first 18 years. But
True.
But it's just to give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Because it isn't easy. I ask when I'm dealing with something that I don't know how to handle. I mean, again, I talked about the relationship side of sports. I will talk to my like the work colleagues, not necessarily people at KAGR, because that's maybe like inappropriate, like, but just to actually hear how other people have dealt with it. Of course, friends, but many of my friends have, their kids are, in college at this point. So I'm just, but I find most of the women who are in the sports industry who are around where I am, they also had kids a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, last one. Your kids may be listening, or one day they will. Anything you'd like to say to them?
Well, this is really nice. I'm only saying this because my kid Googled me the other day. So that was funny. Okay. What I would say to my kids, I believe in you. I love you without judgment. And I want to thank you for bringing me so much joy.
Yes. You did it without crying. You're one of the first.
I mean, because I cried already on the show. You saw me cry. I was like trying to keep it together.
No, you got me twinkly too, because it was over something that's the same thing that I would tear up over that too, because it's like this collision of the things that are sort of most important and meaningful to me. Like, I think sports is like the most important. Like, that's pure joy, meaning you're on a crusade for goodness and over evil. And I love that for that to like collide with your child who you love more than anything else, and to see a glimpse of them maybe experiencing that. Yeah.
Think about how differently.
What else did we cry about?
Think about how differently you watch the Olympics. So I'm not a crier. I really am not. I always cry during the Olympics because it used to be because I'm like, these people worked so hard and they finally like did it. They got here, and I cry because I was happy for them and what they achieved.
Yep.
Now I cry for their parents because their parents must be so proud to see their kids. Like, okay, that's quite
I get that.
a shift.
Full circle, or maybe beyond the circle. I don't even know. Yeah. No, sports that's where life is. I mean, I think there are other ways to experience that, I know, but personally that was so sustaining for me. So I'm so glad that you found a way to continue to do that in a professional setting. And I'm glad that there are more pathways for women to be doing that in general now, because we talked about this before, but I feel like with the rise of women's professional sports also comes all these like actual like office jobs in sports.
Yeah.
Because we can't all be excellent forever.
I'm really thrilled about what's happening with women's sports. It's awesome for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, it's great.
Yes. Are we going to get you into Boston Legacy FC?
I can't talk about it.
Okay, fine.
Talk to you offline.
Anyway, yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming off of a plane to talk to us about this.
Do you like how my hair dried over the course of the call?
Yes, it looked. Yes, I love it. I love it. We went through a journey together.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this podcast and kind of giving me the opportunity to reflect on this side of myself, because it is such a huge part of who I am, but it isn't necessarily. People don't like ask about it. People ask about like, how do you balance life? But it's different than what your questions are. So thank you. I think it's really important what you're doing.
Good. I'm so glad that it resonates. Thank you so much. She's so cool. She's also like, honestly, if you go online, you look at her background, you look at her wife's background. I was like, I sort of know her, and I was nervous looking at her background because she's a very impressive, successful person, and also like totally normal. And I think I feel like I've been drawn to her authenticity and interest in. She's very much like I'm sure she watched Rocky growing up, which is what inspired me as an athlete. Like the do the hard work, sacrifice, consistency. If you like outwork the next person, that's what I think of when I think of sports. And it's nice to be around that mindset again in like sort of the adult world where supposedly they say like it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter, which I know is theoretically true, but it's like sort of comforting to get into like to be around someone that's like work ethic oriented. It feels very, it's a comfortable space for me. So it's really nice to hear her talk about all parts of her life. Yeah. But what did you think?
I thought it was cool. It's so interesting. Similar conversation to with Tina, where in this sports world, how there's this ability to integrate your kids with your work. And how it's a little more, even though there is this like professionalism that you have to ultimately show up and there's limited time off and things are happening and people are playing, like there's consequences, but you're still able to integrate like, oh, and also here's my kids and like bring them in. Even when she was talking about the conference, when it's like, oh, bring your kids if it's on the weekend, I understand that like you would want them to see you being a part of this, and I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I wish it was more accepted in other industries, and so I thought it was. I don't have any really experience with the sports world, and so knowing that that's a thing, I think that's really awesome, and also makes sense. Like as a consumer of like watching sports, it's family events, right? Like you go to a game and it's like you go with your family. I think that that's cool on the back end that still also exists. I thought that was
that's
really
such a good point. I hadn't thought about that, and it is really, it's so true. It's not only is it something that's sort of interesting to talk about at the dinner table, but they can also come to the events and physically participate and want to be there. So I think one of the themes around with various folks that we've talked to has been finding work that is sort of mission aligned with who they want to be and what they want to be doing in the world, because you don't have enough time to contribute that in that way otherwise. How about doing that and also doing something that your kids think is cool and want to be a part of and can be a connecting thing
like
for your kids?
Peak success.
That's very cool.
Is
I
being able to
know.
like I think she has it all. I think she did it.
I know.
Jessica, you did it. Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And then another thing, just I feel like this is like such a necessary thing to acknowledge, and it was only a brief moment of our conversation, deserves more, but postpartum anxiety. And guys, if you feel it, it's real and it's so not talked about enough. And it makes me sad because that has been something that like again, many of our guests have talked about, where it's just like, damn. I mean, Laura talked about it, Tina talked about it, other Tina talked, like I feel like everyone in their own way at least nodded to the fact that like postpartum anxiety is so real, and I didn't know to expect that. I didn't know that that's what it was. So I don't know,
Totally.
it's like a mental health note for everybody to like.
Yes, great flag. That is also, I think there are many reasons to have to respond to it in this way. Have an athlete background, she does too. It's so aligned to like the gritted out. If something is unless you have like a physical, and this is like a whole other issue, unless you have a physical, and if your leg is broken, but the mindset of your emotions are something to plow through and deal with, not that need help necessarily, is such a, I think we're moving out of that a little bit, but it clearly lingers. And I completely agree. I needed doctors to tell me 25 times that my baby's sniffle wasn't going to be the end of his life.
So interesting. Yeah. I think my mom was like that, the buck up, you're fine attitude, like whatever. And for me, I'm like, I think we should talk about this. Like, I think, and so I just am very, I don't know, find your people in your space to be able to talk about it, because it is like you're working on no sleep, probably not the right nutrition. Your world has shifted, and then it's just like, yeah, just be normal and your mental health is going to be fine. Like, it's like, or not, like some people, sure. Knock on wood. I mean, I feel lucky that I've catastrophized my whole life. And so once I had a kid, I was like, meh, I feel fine. I didn't personally struggle with postpartum anxiety. I felt like opposite, but I knew I was prepared for it because I was like, I was aware.
So good. The other, I think, on to that kind of theme, another thing I wanted to, I think, reiterate of what she said was to this Megan Rapinoe speech that she gave after, was it the World Cup or the Olympics or both?
2013.
I should know. Anyway, wherever it comes from, the call to like if you like call to action, if you have resources, do what you can with what you have. I think it is important for people to remember the platform. And actually, V, you've been a champion of that in our world of like, people have a platform. You may not even realize that what you say matters and that you can share your, whatever your version of resources, access, etc., with others. And it doesn't mean you have to start a foundation or move to another country or house children, but like with whatever you have, there are smaller ways that it really matters. And in a way that's like, just do the work for the sake of doing the work, not for glory necessarily, like just to do it. Anyway, it was nice to like model that. Okay.
She's amazing.
I wish I was going to the show with her. That sounds super fun.
Also, just I don't know if this gets cut in the conversation, but the backstory is that she had a crazy flight and she was going to her friend's play because she acknowledged that when it was her birthday, people showed up for her, and that felt really good. And I also think that that's just like a great lesson in general to take away for all of us, as like we get, I don't know, when you become a mom and like friendships and stuff go on the back burner, but like that she acknowledged and noticed that something felt good, and then she wants to do that in return. So
yes,
do more of that.
And the showing up where possible, even when hard.
When you're in the capacity.
Do you
have joy?
Okay, on that point, I actually have a good joy.
Let's hear it.
That's not my kids. Usually that's where I go, which is not wrong. I'm actually getting coffee to this point. I'm getting coffee with an old friend on Friday. And I feel like I've been in this weird place where my schedule is full, but also empty and flexible. Like there's always things for me to be doing, but I also have time to flex. And I haven't been figuring out in that mindset. I'm like, I just sort of am inclined to say no to anything that isn't like getting the job done. But that doesn't make me happy. And it also doesn't make me think about life. So anyways, getting coffee with an old Google friend.
Proud of you.
Keeping the Google network alive. But
it's a networking call.
I'm excited. No, exactly. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Also, I love coffee. We've talked about this.
Hell yes.
Nice. Where's your joy, lady?
My joy is that we have figured out our long-term housing, and we get to stay in a community and a place that we really love. And so I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to like settle into a new space and know that we're going to be there.
Yes.
And not feel like anxious about next steps. I'm excited to like settle even more in. Our current housing situation was temporary. And so now I feel like excited about planning. So that's been a major joy and relief.
That's a big joy, like capital J joy.
Huge.
Bold letters. Huge. Like a lasting joy.
I'm very excited now. It can't go soon enough. Now I'm like, can we move now? But also we have like 3 months. So time to get excited.
I know. I'm so excited for you. That'll be great. A fresh location.
You start in the same place in a way. So
yeah. Look at us doing all the things. Coffee, housing.
Joyful. I know that's right.
Maybe we'll go to a Broadway show. Oh, wait. Also on that, we should end with this. The 3 Bs that she mentioned. I forgot about 4. And then her son added the 4th.
Love.
Okay. I don't want to quiz us.
Bold, beautiful, brave, and
brilliant.
Bold. Or he added brave.
He added brave. Bold, brilliant, beautiful. And then he said, and brave. Be you're bold, brilliant, beautiful, and brave.
Thanks, you too. Listeners, you're also BBB.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.